welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to see this program. It's called 10 Rules for Dealing with Police. It was produced by Fletcher Rights in Washington, D.C., and they're located at fletcherrights.org. Marijuana Resolve is sponsoring this showing as part of our community outreach. As we all know, marijuana is one of the issues where arrests are obviously part of what happens in dealing with the police. And this show is disturbing, but it's instructional. It's inner city, very inner city, and you get the feel, the grittiness of it. But the enumeration of our constitutional rights is very clear and self-evident, and it's an important part of what we should know in dealing with the police. Joseph Brooks is a retired Connecticut police officer and father of 2 grown children. Joseph and his wife Donna are here tonight, and they've come all the way up from Connecticut to introduce the film and to talk to anyone who has questions. He's a former Marine and a graduate of the FBI National Academy. Captain Brooks joined law enforcement against prohibition and became a LEAP speaker in order to educate people on the realities of the problem and encourage their participation in achieving a national drug policy that people can believe in. Ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome, please, Captain Joseph Brooks.
Good evening. I'm very pleased to be invited up here to speak to you. I am a speaker for LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. We believe that all drugs should be legalized.
We need you in front of the microphone. Sorry, Captain. Thank you.
Should be legalized, controlled, and medicalized. We do not believe that people who are using drugs, particularly abusing drugs, should be sent to prison and left there until it's time to get out. We believe they need help, and we believe they should be put into a medicalized situation. There are programs already underway which medicalize drug use. Canada has recently gone that way. Why America continues to keep its drug policy in the way it does is beyond us. We just don't know. I ran a Tri-Town Narcotics Task Force for approximately 6 years and was very much involved in the drug trafficking and the enforcement of the laws. Just because a police officer enforces the law does not necessarily mean that he believes in it. But unfortunately, that's what we get paid for, that's what we do. I don't come new to this. I was talking about this in 1980 when it wasn't PC to do it. People thought that I was going to lose my job, but I didn't. As I said, we are LEAP, we are international, we have people all over the world, and we have people from all walks of law enforcement, from federal down to local, who are speakers. In order to be a speaker, you must have law enforcement background, as I do. This movie was put together, and one of the advisors to this movie is Neil Franklin, who is now the head of LEAP. He was a Baltimore major in the police department down there, and he now runs LEAP. As I say, he was a contributor to this movie. There are many good points to this, but there are some things you have to ask questions about. I'll be here to answer those questions for you.
For our viewers in Burlington and Rutland and Mad River Valley and other places around the state, We were telling the viewing audience that this film can be seen on YouTube by simply typing in either Fletcher Wrights or 10 Rules for Dealing with Police. And you can see, the folks at home can see this video at their own leisure. And at this point, we're going to run the film. It's just a little shy of 40 minutes long. And when the film is done, we'll come back. And if you have any questions or any comments, if anyone wants to speak up, Captain Brooks will be here to talk with you. So, Joe, let's begin the process of taking it to the viewers. Thank you. As Thomas Jefferson said, information is the currency of democracy. And the purpose of this is to be informed and to know your rights, which is something that everyone should know for a variety of reasons. My name is Vita Crocetta, and I'm the state coordinator of Marijuana Resolve. Tonight with us is Daryl Pillsbury and Joe Bushy, who is, both of those guys are helping us to get this film so that we can get it around the state. Tonight we have with us as well as Captain Brooks, Sheila Linton from the Vermont Partnership for Diversity and Fairness, and Captain Brooks and Sheila, if you could come up here to the front. The two of you, they're here to answer any questions, but we're also interested in your comments. Not just questions, but if you have something to say about this. And speak loud so that we can pick you up. And for our viewers in Burlington and Rutland and the other places around the state, check out FletcherWrights.org. And this film called 10 Ways for Dealing with Police. We'd like to thank the law enforcement against prohibition for their help tonight and asking Captain Brooks to come to speak to you all. So once again, Captain Brooks and Sheila Linton from the Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity.
I hope as many arms go in here tonight as went up in the movie. And I have never met anyone yet who's been happy to see flashing lights behind them as they're driving down the road. So police are not exactly the most well-liked people in the community. Unless, of course, you have an emergency, then you want to see it. Does anyone have any particular question on this film?
In the situation where they took the young man's backpack and started searching his backpack, by not saying anything, are you implying that they have consent?
It really doesn't matter what you say. You have to remember that the man who was speaking in this movie is a defense attorney. He makes a living from people who flex their rights. It doesn't matter what you say to the officer. You generally are with that officer alone. And what you say to him is never going to be brought to the court. If it is brought through your attorney, it's going to be looked at as just a way to try to mitigate your arrest. So don't believe that just because you say, I don't consent to a search, that it's going to matter if and when you get to court. Anytime you want to jump in, please, jump right in. I can tell you that what you're seeing here is basically true. And I can tell you that most police officers are honest, decent men and women who are doing a dangerous job. I believe it was 169 were killed last year on the job. So it's not just something they go out and do for the fun of it. They carry a gun for a reason. They do get shot at, they do get assaulted, and they do get hurt. Most of them have wives and children, and they want to go to work in the morning and home at the end of the day. But I'll tell you right now, that does not mean that they are all good police officers. In the state of Connecticut right now, there are 3 police departments who are under investigation, one of which is under investigation by the federal government because of so many violations on the part of that police department. We have a situation where off-duty officer hits a 16-year-old boy, kills him. His father is a sergeant on the same department as his off-duty officer belongs to. The sergeant comes to the scene, takes his son back to the department 3 times. And I can tell you right now, I know why he brought him back. Brought him back so he could blow into the machine and see how drunk he was. Because he was drunk. But they'll never be able to prove it because they did not take a blood test. Yes.
This is a question for Sheila. Does this effort tie into the bias-free policing in Vermont that's been being developed right now?
Well, what I can say is that there isn't a direct connection in terms of what is happening throughout the state of Vermont with the bias-free policing. But this video, and Vida and Daryl presenting this video to us, came at a perfect time to where we are trying to disseminate information about bias-free policing and making sure that our police departments are practicing bias-free policing. So this is another additional effort in part to prevent things like this going on with our police department. What I'd like to do is just take a moment right now just to tell you a little bit about what I do at Vermont Partnership and how this really relates to the film today. So as Vida has said, I work for Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity as their advocate for social justice. And one of the advocacy programs that we provide to the community is a civil advocacy program where I advocate for individuals on behalf of their human and civil rights. Part of what that means is that many people come into my office with a variety of different issues, and some of them have to do directly with police conduct. And I'd just like to share with you over the last year or two what has been the common themes that have come into my office in terms of conduct by our either local police, meaning Brattleboro, our Sheriff's Department, Newfane, or with our state police. These seem to be the trends that we've been seeing come through our office. I want to make it really clear that not everybody who comes to my office seeking some type of resolution or some type of space to really sort of just vent their concerns makes a complaint. So these issues that I will address are not necessarily individuals who have gone and made a complaint to these departments, but some of them have. And so as those common themes that we have, that I've seen with individuals that I've worked with, is a lot of questions around search and seizure. So I really felt like this video was very appropriate for the individuals that I'm servicing in our organization. A lot of issues around bullying and harassment, and it happens a lot in just generally in the community. And what I'm seeing more and more of, because of the lack of either harassment or stalking laws within the state of Vermont, is that more people are coming forward saying, my neighbor's harassing me, but I have no rights, there's nothing I can do. Or I live in public housing and I have to rent in the same apartment building as this individual, and I'm constantly being harassed on a daily basis. But there's very little that the police can do. And it's not just what the police can do, but how the police respond. A lot of times what is happening in those instances is the police respond in an inequitable way. So I had this case where there was involving females and males, where the females happened to be the alleged perpetrators in the situation. But because there was a male present on the scene, people who called the police assumed there was a domestic violence issue going on, and the male actually got arrested for what was happening. And really, it was the females who were the perpetrators in this situation. So differential treatment because of gender roles, because of race, because of class, because of the neighborhood you live in, all of this is going on in the response to our police officers to the people who need them. Another issue that's going on is disorderly conduct. disorderly conduct is really a charge that is fairly minimum and very easy to get. You can get it as easy as saying a word that's inappropriate to an officer, raising your voice, doing it, pretty much almost anything, it seems like disorderly conduct, people can get that charge. A lot of people don't understand what that really means and how that reflects on their records and what they have to do to either sort of combat that charge in the court. People who come to me, many of them end up with disorderly conduct charges, and I'm not sure how to fight them. But there's many different elements to a charge that people don't realize as well. So part of what my role is helping verse them in what the law is, what the proper procedure and protocol is, and what is it exactly do you have to prove in the court of law when you're charged with a specific crime. Assault, again, I'm seeing a lot of individuals being assaulted, and again, there being a lot of what I call gender bias in those assaults, where it used to be looked at as male alleged perpetrator on female victim. Now there's a lot more female violence and a lot more women on women violence going on as well, and how officers respond to that. I've had a lot of concerns with people asking about investigations. When I called the police because my neighbor was parked in my parking spot, but then all of a sudden, like you saw in this video with the older woman, all of a sudden I'm going to jail for something else. There's been a lot of complaints that people have come to me where I've called the officer for help and they didn't actually help me, but yet I actually endured something or ended up getting arrested for something completely unrelated to the incident to why they were called. People are experiencing in the community, what is reasonable force? There's been a lot of questions of people coming to my office of what can an officer do? Can he really hold me behind my back? Can he, throw me to the ground? What are the things that he can do? I had a client who was an elderly woman who felt as though the police used much more force than they needed to. Disabled elderly woman, and felt like the officers in this particular case did not use reasonable force. Perception, and this goes right into your question about bias-free policing, that everybody has their own prejudices and everybody carries their own biases. So when officers are out there, what is their perception of the situation? Based on what that person looks like, based on what neighborhood they come from, based on how they dress, what are their biases already coming to the scene? Have they been called there before? So really training our officers in bias-free policing is really key to sort of negate that situation. Then it's racial profiling, goes without saying. And then the situation with plainclothes versus uniformed officers. I was working with an individual who had been, how can I put it? I don't want to say who had encountered an officer that was in plain clothing and was instructed to do something as if the officer was on duty, and being really confused of where the line is between a plainclothes officer on duty or off, or an officer who is in clothing on or off, and where do you draw the line? Where do they have their authority? And a lot of questions with that. So I just wanted to use that as sort of a prelude, that these are the common themes that I'm seeing in our community. If you're part of this Windham County community, these are some themes that are coming, and these come from all different ages, all different races, all different classes. I can assure you that the people who walk through my office are a very eclectic, diverse group of people. The other thing I'd like to say is that back in 2004, Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity, formerly Alana Community Organization, did a police relations survey where we interviewed minority households. And within this survey, about half the minority households within Brattleboro County. And that was on local police, the sheriff, and the state's department. And what we found out from this survey was that minority households had a disproportional contact with law enforcement, whether that was positive or negative. I'm going to make that really clear, that maybe they called for something that was positive, but either way, they had a disproportional contact with police officers compared to their white counterparts. This really ensued a lot of discussion in the community, and really wanted to see, well, why are these differences? And there we have the bias-free policing that comes into that factor. The other thing that I wanted to just briefly talk about is the CPCC, which is the Citizens Police Communication Committee. Many of you who are Brattleboro residents may know about this committee, and I'd just like to just read a little brief blurb of what the committee is about. It says that this committee is a 5-member committee. Charge is to provide consistent feedback between the police and the community, arrange for an independent means to mediate disputes between community and police and to foster community safety. The committee's early tasks will be to the creation of bylaws and training and mediation and current police policies. The committee will be responsible for the intake of all citizens' complaints, categorizing the complaints, directing the process of complaint resolution, and analyzing complaint history to identify trends and problems. Part of why we did this survey back in 2004 was because at the time the chief of police did not believe that there was differential treatment, racial profiling, biased policing, did not believe there was any of that going on. And so in order to sort of have a counter reaction to that, we did this survey and realized that he was wrong. The CPCC was formed, and currently it has 5 members. My understanding is one of the vacancies was just filled. But I'm putting that plug out there because in June of this year, at the end of June, there will be vacancies that are open. 3 of the individuals of the 5 that currently sit on the board, terms will end. And so we're really encouraging for people like yourselves to really get involved in this process and really give it the teeth or the power that it really needs to have. So, and then the last thing I'll say is that at Vermont Partnership, we are an entity, a safe haven for individuals to come and to file their complaints. Many people do not want to go to the police station to file a complaint against the police. So we are an entity who houses these complaints, who will help people fill them out. If you don't know how to read, you don't know how to write, there's an individual such as myself in the office helping anybody for free who walks through the door who feels as though they have a grievance or a compliment for the police. And so I just wanted to make those services available. And my card's on the back table, and if you have any more questions or any questions based on what I said, please let me know. Daryl.
Well, I was very glad that you brought up something. A lot of information really quick, Sheila. That was very good. I can tell you that. You're getting really good at this. Listen, the CPCC, I was glad she brought that up because in June, like she said, they are going to need some members that go to meetings, okay? Otherwise, that is going to get disbanded, all right? And it will be very hard to bring back to town once it's gone. So if there is anybody interested in here in June, you want to get a hold of the select board and do that because that's what's going to happen.
What kind of
That's what's
events
good.
are we talking about?
Well, one of the things when we first started out, that was the fact that we were trying to log how many people thought they were being racially profiled and have it so the chief got a monthly report and then it would go to the CPCC or whatever we were called. And I don't know, Terry, were you part of that when we first started out?
Very first.
Yeah. So there was a lot of interested people that started this, which has lost some of its teeth. But anyway, thank you for bringing it up, Sheila.
You're welcome.
I work with teenagers, and I'm wondering if young people, juveniles so-called, have the same rights that adults have in terms of search and seizure and stuff like that was on the video.
Teenagers have more rights, especially if they're under a particular age. In Connecticut, it's 16. So if they're under the age of 16, we can't even question them without having a parent or a guardian present while we're doing the questioning. So they have, in some ways, they have more rights than adults do. But that's basically the only difference, is when you're trying to question them, you have to give more to a juvenile or to a teenager than you would to a full-grown adult.
What about you, Sheila? What have you noticed in terms of teens coming in? What does that look like for you?
Well, it's interesting because we're currently at Vermont Partnership, we're really talking about maybe formulating some workshops to really inform youth more about their rights, more in a general sense about their rights, but also about when you're encountered with police. And I actually had this question today when somebody was going to come here and wanted to see the film but wasn't able to make it. They said, I'm working with youth, what does this mean for youth? And I had the exact same response as he did, is that really the only other thing that's protected is because they're a minor and they need an adult present. But in terms of really getting together as organizing, as people who work with youth, Vermont Partnership is more than willing to sponsor or put together something that really helps inform youth of their rights. And we would really love to see more of that going on, whether that's within the school atmosphere or within the youth entities that serve youth, or or in your homes or whatever it may be. But there is an issue with youth and their rights, and more specifically with youth who are 18 but still in school. That seems to be a rising concern that, especially around relationships, and also just about, about the school environment as well. So there's a lot of talk about that because of that specific sort of window there for youth, and people really wanting to disseminate the information on what their rights are so we can protect not only our youth, but we can protect everybody else who's involved.
While I'm here, I'm going to go into a little bit of what I represent while I'm here. Does anybody here know why marijuana is illegal? Don't everybody jump up at once. And you've been being told this since you were born, basically, at least a lot of you here.
I know why it's illegal, but I'd love to hear you tell us why.
Okay.
It initially threatened paper and fuel in the 30s as resources, did it not?
It did that, but that's not the only reason. It's part of the reasons. There were a number of reasons. But I will tell you right now that the laws against drugs in this country are based strictly and totally on race. Smokable opium was outlawed because it was smoked by the Chinese. And they basically were here primarily as men. There were very few Chinese women here. And the people in this country that didn't like them, didn't like the fact they had been brought here to work on the railroads and take jobs away from people, figured that by smoking this thing, all they wanted to do was to get together with white women. So that was one reason why they did away with smokable opium. Marijuana was basically brought here by the Mexicans, and it was used primarily by Mexicans and blacks. Now, why did that cause a problem? That caused a problem because the three men who made marijuana illegal in this country were flagrant racists. They absolutely hated the Mexicans and they hated blacks. One of those men was William Randolph Hearst.
Ah, yeah.
He was the largest publisher in the country, all across the country. He demonized marijuana and he demonized the blacks and the Mexicans as much as he possibly could. He even went to the point of saying that police officers had to go from 32 caliber guns to 38 caliber guns because it was the only way to stop a black on marijuana. It was absolutely terrible the way they demonized the blacks and the Hispanics when it came to the use of marijuana. But Harry Anslinger, Andrew Bennett, and William Randolph Hearst were the three men who got together and used greed, yellow journalism, hatred, finance to get together and push marijuana into an illegal status. The 1937 Marijuana Tax Act. That's how it happened. I don't know of any other law in this country that was passed based on racism and still exists on the books today. It's a class 1 drug, which means it has absolutely no medical use, period. It was done with no scientific and no medical research. we know it's been being used for medicinal purposes for centuries. Goes way back. And up until 1937, it really wasn't a problem to anybody. As a matter of fact, marijuana, we can take cocaine and heroin. Cocaine and heroin weren't a problem to anyone either. As a matter of fact, you could send away in a book, a magazine, and order it. You could go into a pharmacy and buy it for $1.89. You could buy a little tin. Why? Same reason they put it in Coca-Cola. Made you feel good. Okay. One of the largest users of those drugs back then were women who used it for their monthly problems. And you can do all the research you'd like to, you won't find that it was a major problem at any time up until 1937. The only thing this country tried to do was collect taxes on these substances. 1937, they said, you can have marijuana, you can grow marijuana, but you need a tax stamp to do it. And what did the government say? We're not going to make it. So in other words, it was legal if you had something that the government wouldn't give you. A little hypocrisy there? My feeling is this. If hypocrisy was a saleable commodity, this government would never again have a federal deficit. We make hypocrisy by the ton every second of every day. We are terrific at that, especially politicians. And they'll tell you one thing and lie right through their teeth. They'll tell you whatever they want you to hear to get elected. And once they get elected, they don't care what you hear them say.
How come hemp was outlawed? We used to make rope.
See, that's part of what this gentleman brought up before. Hemp was outlawed because Andrew was the owner of Bennett Financial, which was a backer of DuPont Chemical. DuPont invented nylon. They didn't want any other substance that you could make cloth out of. So they wanted hemp put out of business too. And when they did that, of course, they put a lot of things out of business. If you pick up the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which they showed up here, if you pick them up right now, you can be accused of possessing marijuana. Why? Because they're written on hemp paper. Simple as that. It's the only kind of paper we had back then. The jeans that you're wearing, some of you in here right now, the first pair of jeans was made out of hemp. That's why they got the reputation of being so long-lasting and so hard to tear or ruin or rip, whatever. Made out of hemp. Henry Ford made a car out of hemp. You know, I stand up here as an expert on drugs. I can tell you this. If you go to Google and ask about drugs, there's 1 million entries. I haven't had time to read 1 million entries, and I never will. But I can tell you this. I've been there. I've seen it. I've had to arrest my friends, my neighbors. I've had to not be invited to parties that my own family was involved in because there was pot there and they didn't want me there. One of my very close friends died, and I wanted to go to his funeral. His children would not invite me because he had gone to prison for drugs. You're talking about race. 70% of the blacks and browns in prison today are there for non-violent drug offenses. 70%. Prisons today are not owned by the state or the federal government anymore. They're owned privately. And bottom line is, you can't make a profit if you own a prison if you have empty cells. So what do you want to do? You want to keep them full. You don't want changes made in the drug policy in this country today. They want those cells to stay full. And they don't care if you're a nonviolent drug offender or not. They want the cells to stay full. 35,000 people in Mexico have been killed so far that we know of. They're still finding graves here and there full of people, cutting people's heads off and throwing them out in the street. Children are being killed, women are being killed. 35,000. Are we free of that? Do we have no connection to the violence that's going on in Mexico right now? We're the single largest consumer of illegal drugs in the world, right here, in this country. That's what they're fighting about, is who is going to sell to us. That's why they're killing each other. So we cannot say we're not connected to that violence. We are connected to that violence. When is it going to stop? 100 years we've been doing this. 40 years since Nixon said war on drugs. Well, if we're fighting a war on drugs, we've long ago lost it. $240 million a day is made by drug dealers and taken out of our economy. Over $1 trillion spent already in 40 years. We're heading for our second trillion. And our bottom line is this: LEAP says legalize all drugs, control all drugs, and medicalize all and any drugs that need it. Marijuana. Anyone know in here how many people have died from use of marijuana alone? You got it right. None. Absolutely none.
Just to follow that up, I work at the hospital. I asked the doctors, more than one, how would you treat somebody who comes in with a marijuana overdose? None of them knew how, because none of them said it could be done.
That's right. You can't overdose on marijuana.
And we have children coming in that same hospital left and right with alcohol poisoning.
That's right. I am an addict. As I stand here right now, I'm an addict. Okay? I am addicted to the single worst drug in this society, if not in the world. 450,000 people a year die because of these things. 5 million people around the world die every year because of these things. But they're legal. The problem with them is they're a long-time killer. I can go out right now and smoke 5 in a row. I can't overdose on them. But my body's telling me, you're going to die one of these days. Keep that up.
Captain Brooks, let's take the police encounter and reverse it. Law enforcement against prohibition, which is the LEAP that you're referring to, has this position because it's my understanding that police with long-term experience who've had those encounters with both, with marijuana people and other drugs, have seen things that the public really doesn't get to see, and has become against the drug war. So that encounter is a little different. How do you think across the country, how do you feel that that's working? What is law enforcement against prohibition doing in terms of helping Americans to understand police encounters with drugs?
What we're trying to do is to stand up and say, it's enough. It's time for us to start looking at a sane and productive way to deal with the drug policy in this country. We are doing this because we believe that we bring credibility to this issue. We've been there, we've done that, we've seen it. You cannot contradict me when it comes to the drug war simply because I've been there and you haven't. I don't care how much you use. That doesn't mean anything to me. It's how many people you've arrested, how many bodies you've had to pick up and take out, how many lives you've seen ruined because you slammed the metal door behind them. How many children you've seen orphaned because their mother and or father have ended up in jail for non-violent drug reasons? And it goes on and on and on. And we just can't seem to get it under control. What we're trying to say, and I've had people say to me, why should we make another drug available and legal? We've got tobacco and we've got alcohol, which there's no question about the fact the most violent producing substance that we have, violence, is associated with alcohol. No question about it. Why should we make another drug available? It's here. It's not that we're making it available. What we're saying is it's here. And right now, a 10-year-old can go up to a drug dealer and buy the drug because they don't ask for identification. They really don't care. All they want to see is the money. So right now you have people who are running the drug situation, the cartel leaders, who have been featured in Forbes magazine on their list of billionaires. You have cartel leaders who have become billionaires through the drug traffic. And where's most of that money coming from? Us. We have American troops, and we have police officers, border guards, DEA agents dying in the fight against drugs. Where are the people who are shooting them and killing them getting their money? They're getting it from the drug trade. We're in Afghanistan. We have American kids dying over there, and 50% of their GDP is earned from opium. So let me see if I have this right. I'm a Marine, and I know this for a fact. I'm a Marine. They send me to guard the farmer and his opium crop so that he can turn it into heroin, which he can send over to the United States, which cops and DEA, etc., die trying to fight, and at the same time, the Taliban is making money to buy weapons with which to shoot at me and kill me if they can. Does anybody but me see something wrong with that? You can go into certain cities right now, certain areas of certain cities that police officers will not go into. Why? Because the street gangs in those areas control those areas. They have more guns and better guns than the cops do. Where are they getting the guns? How are they getting the guns? Money they're making from the drug traffic is how they're getting it. Yes.
Now, a lighter question is actually directed to Sheila. And in Burlington and maybe in other towns, and this might be true in towns in Connecticut also, it's illegal to cross the street except at the red lights. I believe that's correct. Which so you could find yourself in a police encounter with that. What type of disturbance is that if you're stopped, you cross the street in the middle of the block and a police officer stops you? What is that? What's that called? Is that disturbing the peace? What is that for?
Jaywalking.
Well, my understanding is that's jaywalking, and it's not something around here that people often get arrested for or get a ticket for around here.
So that's a low-level police encounter, you would say?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Could I pursue that previous you were talking about, Catherine, in regard to the prisons and the privatization of the prisons? What do you think if you get a sense of police personnel across the country, what are their feelings about the privatization of prisons? I mean, they're obliged to pick up people who are committing crimes, however small, and they might find themselves picking up kids for just nothing at all, to fill the prisons so that the profits can be made. And like that crooked judge in Florida that did get caught because he was sending people with misdemeanors into prisons to fill up the prisons, and he was in cahoots with the corporations that were building the prisons, you know, and it just sounded like one of these operations. How pervasive is that, and what are police personnel feelings about that? I mean, they're caught in the middle of this sort of thing.
They just had 2 more judges in Pennsylvania accused of the same thing. In this particular case, they were dealing with juveniles. And they were sending juveniles as young as 10 years old to detention centers that were owned privately. And in this particular case, these are real nasty judges. They wouldn't even let the child say goodbye to their parents. They'd take them right out of the courtroom immediately, send them to a detention center. One of the 2 judges has been adjudicated already. He's been found guilty. He made almost $1 million by sending these kids to this detention center. Does this go on in this country? Absolutely, no question about it. How do police officers feel about it? In all honesty, I don't think that most police officers think about it. It's not part of their job to worry about what happens to someone after the arrest is made and all the paperwork is put together and sent to the court. At that point, it becomes the court, prosecutor, judge, etc. And I can tell you this, it's not just the police officer you're going to meet on the street that may not be decent or honest. The prosecutors, in my estimation, are the most powerful people in the criminal justice system, because a judge never hears a case if the prosecutor doesn't bring it forward. They're the ones, and they are also given immunity. They can use lying, cheating, it doesn't matter. Malicious, doesn't matter what they say or do in court. They can get away with it because they have immunity. You cannot come back on them and try to sue. And my feeling is, what the hell? Why does a prosecutor need immunity? He's in the courtroom. If you're going to give immunity to anybody, give it to the cop. He's out there on the street with a gun on his side. Give him immunity, not the prosecutor, but they do give it to the prosecutor.
I have a comment on that, just that might relate on a community level, because that's sort of why I'm here, is just to sort of bring back things to on a community level. Something that has been addressed in my agency of individuals that I've been working with is who makes those deciding factors of when you get charged, how you get charged. There's a misnomer that the police officers are the ones who charge you in a case, and just so people understand, that's not the case. The officer is the one who arrests you, and he's the one who makes the recommendation to the district attorney or the state's attorney, but he is not, or she is not, the individual who actually charges you with whatever infraction that there may be. So when there are interactions, especially in regards to youth, when there's an interaction between an officer and a youth, or an officer and an individual, and they're having that conversation, or I'm going to charge you with this, and I'm going to do this, and as you said, they have a right legally to lie, that these people are frantic because they're like, oh, what could I lose? Or maybe I do have something going on, or maybe there's this, maybe there's that. The reality to that situation is that they don't have that power. They don't have that authority. The authority really lies in the hands of the DA or the SA. And what I've been seeing more and more is how those two sort of meld together, because within the judicial system itself is that everybody does know everybody. The cops know the DA knows the judges, or the attorneys know the judges. And it is people all working together. And sometimes you'll see in a courtroom, if any of you've been in a courtroom, that everybody's shaking hands at the end of the day and at lunch, and everybody's conversing together. And we currently even have people who are in the police department now who work part-time in the DA right now, right here in our own community. So just to be informed that, again, the police do not make the decisions to charge you. They make a recommendation to what they would like to charge you with, and that's backed up with whatever their affidavit is. And that affidavit weighs very heavily on what the determination is for the DA.
This is really not related to drug interference, but I'm a filmmaker. I'm doing a thing on activism. And I look at this and I say, wouldn't it be wonderful if protesters or potential terrorists would know what their rights are? Because a lot of those First Amendment, a lot of the Bill of Rights are thrown right out the window if the word terrorist is in the mix. So, and where does somebody go to get information on what the difference between the protester is and a terrorist in the legal profession? Where do they go to get that information? I was thinking because there's so many protesters out there, or activists, that aren't, by any definition, any kind of a threat, except they want to express their discontent. And what are their legal rights? Where would somebody like me go to get advice on what the legal parameters are in that case?
If you're willing to pay an attorney, you go to a lawyer. If you're not willing to pay an attorney, it depends on what they call you, what society calls you. You are an activist, or you're a protester, or you're a terrorist. Depends on what the situation is. What's going on in Wisconsin right now? Are they activists? Are they terrorists? Right now they're protesting union busting out there by the new governor. What are they? Where would you go to find out? There is no particular place where you can go and say, oh, okay, this is what I am. Depends on what society calls you.
What do you mean by, I don't mean to press when you say society. I mean, if there's a blogger on the internet and he's doing nothing but expressing discontent, dissatisfaction with what's going on, at what point does he have to worry about invasion of his privacy, wiretapping, and what are his rights under the circumstances?
He has to worry about it right away,
Yeah.
almost immediately. As soon as somebody sees that, who doesn't agree, or feels that it's threatening, or that it's way out in left field or right field, that person can turn around and complain. And where are they going to complain? State police, federal police, depends on where they're going to complain. Can the police jump right in and start wiretapping, if you want to call it that? Yes, they can, especially under the Patriot Act. That's what the Patriot Act did. It allows federal police to wiretap you anytime, for any reason.
Do they have a complaint?
No. No. If they have probable cause, we'll go back to that probable cause. If they think you're a bad guy or a threat, they can come after you.
And I would like to just say, again, on the community level, if you're questioning whether you're in question and you don't know your rights, then again, people that I see at Vermont Partnership, they come with an array of issues. And I don't have necessarily a template. Every individual that walks through my office is worked with individually. If I can't help you, I'm very honest about that. I'm not an attorney, I'm an advocate, and I'm an activist as well. So I'm determined to sort of find out what those recourses or what those resources may be for you. So if you came into my office with a specific concern saying, hey, somebody's targeting me because they think I'm a terrorist, then I would go through the process of trying to determine, which would be starting with a civil rights attorney really, and try to really guide you through what are the processes, what are the procedures that need to take place in this particular situation. So those services on a local level are available. They don't necessarily turn out the way that somebody would hope, but they're very informative and you get a lot of education from them, if nothing else.
We do have people in Washington who speak down there, and we would like to speak for as many people as we possibly can. So please, if you so desire, please join us.
How many people are you right now?
Don't know. I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because we do not publish a membership list. And we don't do that because a lot of people who belong to LEAP are in sensitive positions and do not want to be known. Because for some reason we still have politicians who are afraid of drugs and afraid to talk about that. And the funny part of it is I was told about LEAP by a very influential politician, attorney in my own community. I didn't even know LEAP existed. He's the one that told me about it. When I found out there were no speakers in Connecticut, I volunteered to become a speaker. But he did not want his name to be known. So we do not publish a list of members. What we do is we send you information. Okay?
But
can
do
go,
so you don't know the approximate numbers of people that are,
I have no idea. I don't know if we've got 20,000, 50,000, 150,000, I do not know.
It is nationwide, isn't it?
International,
International.
yes, international, all over the world. Yes, sir.
Captain, as one of them politicians, or former ones, one of the reasons they can't come out is because they get crucified too.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I did, just a really quick story, was when I was running for the select board this time, what I did, and this is how Marijuana Resolve started, was I did want to come out because, like I was talking to you earlier, sitting on the corrections committee for 8 years at the state of Vermont, where we had a 4% budget item when I first got on there for corrections at 48 million. When I left 8 years later, we were at 10% of the budget. Higher education was at 4% of the budget, and we were spending $140-something million. And a lot of that was for nonviolent drug offenses. We could save a fortune in this state. And when I saw how the kids were losing their scholarships and just their, you know, kid gets a scholarship to go to college, all of a sudden he's riding in the back of a car somewhere, he's done if he gets the, you know, if he goes to court. So I decided, as a politician that was kind of well known in the area at the time, to step out and say, listen, this is nuts. It's time we start talking. And I wanted to see if everybody was all of a sudden going to call me the knucklehead, and just, I did very well. But I live in a community that kind of would do that kind of thing. But I did take a step forward. And now I'm getting out of politics. One of the main reasons why is because of the way I feel about our drug laws. They are really ridiculous. You know, they tell us to think outside of the box. In 2008, the state of Vermont made $68 million on the tobacco tax. $68 million. We have a major deficit right now. I believe if you made marijuana legal, taxed it, number one, we'd be saving lives in Mexico. We'd be generating what is known, I mean, in Vermont, it is one of our biggest cash crops, if not the biggest, which along with 12 other states. But I just feel that it's been so ridiculous what we're doing, and to help some of the programs by doing this, I believe we would generate about $100 million or more in revenue. Just in the state of Vermont, and you're talking 600 and some odd thousand people, at about 15,000 that we know of that are probably occasional users.
Very easily. You raise that much money very easily. You know, it's hard for me to stand up here and talk about drugs because it's such a wide-ranging subject. There's so many different aspects that I can talk about. So I try not to jump from one issue to another issue because it almost sounds like I'm discombobulated up here. But that's the way drugs is. You start talking about one thing and it leads you to talk about another. Talk about Connecticut, $666 million is being spent to maintain our correction system. I can tell you this, schools and teachers, schools are being closed, teachers are being laid off in far greater numbers than prison guards. Prison guards have a pretty good job. But teachers, stop and think about that for a minute. Why are we putting so much money into corrections and not putting hardly any money into building schools and colleges, which is what we need to do? We need to educate our youth. We need to get parents involved. We need them to start thinking about what the future has for them. We can't have them continue to think that the cop is out there just to bust them and screw up their lives. That's not what it's supposed to be about. And please, do not leave here thinking for 1 second that politics and money are not the driving factors of our drug policy in this country. Because that's exactly what it is. It's politics and money. Those two things drove it in 1937. They're still driving it now. In Connecticut, our governor, last governor, vetoed medicinal marijuana. Our legislature passed it all the way up to her, and she said no. We also have Pfizer in our state. Have any idea how much money Pfizer contributes to politicians? that pretty much follow their line, we are known as the insurance capital of the world. Have any idea how much money the insurance companies donate? Especially now that corporations are people and can donate as much as they want and pretty much now own our political system. Children, please, don't even begin to think that they are as important as our society would like them to be. They don't work, they don't pay taxes, and they don't vote. And if you look at the way children are treated in our society today, there are hundreds of thousands of them in foster homes, in jails, living on the street, in homes where they're being neglected and abused. Why isn't the money that's going into fighting the drug war, which is a ridiculous waste, a dismal failure, why isn't it going to something sane and productive where it should be going?
Question. Captain Brooks. You said politics and money are the driving forces behind the policy as it exists today and the reason it's not changing. What kind of an answer do you have for those that would suggest, gosh, we can't change those laws because think how many corrections officers will be out of a job? I mean, if there's 850,000 arrests in 2009 for marijuana and almost 700,000 of them were for personal use related nonviolent level of offenses, God, you hit the nail on the head. You got to keep those cells filled. How will the economy respond to that? What would your answer be to those that would say, God, now you want us to all be unemployed? All these, and don't get me wrong, I think it should happen sooner than later. But there's a strong argument to be made for how many people will suffer, if you will, in their own way from full legalization.
Absolutely. And we get that question quite often. And our answer to that is take some of the $72 billion a year that is being spent right now by state and federal government, $72 billion a year. Put that into job training. Put it into building small businesses. Put it into sane and productive ways of using that money to make jobs. Give people opportunities. Yes, some people are going to be laid off. Yes, some people are going to lose their job. Does that mean they're not going to be able to go over into something else that's as rewarding to them as what they were doing? Maybe they become teachers. Maybe they start to become businessmen because some of that $72 billion is put into starting small businesses. There are tremendous opportunities to us to use that $72 billion, and keep in mind that any number we use is only a guess because we can't put an absolute dollar on it. Right now, $72 to $75 billion a year this country spends, but I don't know if that includes all the money we give to Colombia or all the money we give to Afghanistan, etc. So we use $72 to $75 billion. Can that money be put into other things that will provide jobs and opportunities for people? Absolutely. That would be our answer, as it always has.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question? Do you think it's fair to say that one of the main obstructions to the government considering any level of legalization is because they just plain can't figure out how to get their cut out of it yet?
They know how to get their cut out of it, believe me. As far as we know, all of the cigarette makers already bought land to grow marijuana. They're not stupid. They look down the road for the long haul. Okay. So when and if it becomes legal, they'll be right on top of it. They know how to get their cut. Politicians do, so does in business. They know. The problem with marijuana is it's so cheap. That's the problem. You can't sell marijuana for $120 for a little bottle with 10 pills in it. But you can with oxycodone. As a matter of fact, oxycodone is so precious, it's $80 a pill on the street. $80 a pill. If you get 30 in the bottle, times 80.
And there's a pain clinic in Florida at about every street corner, isn't there? They're like the photomat booths of the 70s. The pain clinics in Florida, not where they write prescriptions. Your pain, boom, you get a prescription for oxycodone.
If you talk to Rush Limbaugh, yeah.
We have another question, and Marshall, you're Marshall Miller, right? Marshall, Terry Martin. Would you like to say, is there something that you would like to ask or say?
Yeah.
Just come on up. And we have one more question.
Everybody microphone here. I did come up earlier. I'm Terry that he kept pointing to in the back of the room there. And I didn't want to upstage a good captain here because the captain's worked on the front lines of some major crime. But I was just a road officer. I was with the Brattleboro Police Department for 2 years and currently with the Sheriff's Department for 2 years. 28 years with the State Police and retired. 8 years as the Crime Prevention Public Information Officer. And then I've been with the federal court as a court. Some of you seen me down the post office maybe when you come in, those distinguished looking guys with the blue blazers. Over to the side looks like an airport gauntlet. So I've been 12 years with the Federal Marshal's Court Security Program. So I am a special deputy U.S. Marshal, but I don't do the frontline stuff that the Marshals do. A good question came up very earlier, and I wanted to speak to that. Many of you know Curtis Reed. You all know Curtis Reed?
Yeah.
The former law and the Vermont Partnership. About O'Brien. Tara O'Brien. You know her?
Yeah.
Okay. Occasionally, and myself. We served in the last commission for the Vermont Advisory Committee for the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. And that's my primary reason for being here tonight. And the question came up about your civil rights, your constitutional rights. We did a study that we concluded, and this is available if you go to the usccr.gov. That's the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. We serve as an advisory committee, a statewide advisory committee. 3 of your people were on that committee right from Brattleboro, which is excellent. Curtis has stepped down from the committee. Tara and I continue to serve on the committee. So we've looked at racial profiling, and this whole thing, like I say, it's available in a PDF format. So we did about a 2-year study on this, and then in August of 2009, we authored this study statewide. Just because of this, we've now spun off into looking at the bias policing across the state, and I've worked with a committee with the Vermont State Police, and who now has, with their own organization, has pushed to have every cruiser in the state of Vermont to have video camera to protect you, so people see what's happening in the situations like you saw. I fully agree with that movie. The 10 points were excellent. And I especially like the bumper sticker. Any of you got that bumper sticker? Bad cop, no donut?
No.
I was a good cop. I ate plenty of donuts. And if you want to know the rest of the story, why that story came along with cops and donuts, I can tell that to you sometime also. So, spinning off from that, there were four police departments in the northwest part of Vermont that did a 1-year study. And if you go to the Burlington Police Department's site, you can download this study of Winooski, South Burlington, and one other department here. This study was done by the Northeastern University. And it was another department. UVM Police, which is a full-fledged police department. They They recorded every stop that they had. They recorded the race of the person, what the officer perceived the race of the person was. Not saying, well, are you African American? Are you Asian? Are you a Native American? They didn't ask questions like that to interfere with it. Just they looked at the person and said, you're white, so they put you down as Caucasian. So they have broken down every stop. The primary reason people have been stopped out there is what you saw as one of the points out there. You're speeding down the road. You're drawing attention to yourself. You're asking to get yourself stopped. And if you got something in the car, then you're just going to lead like you saw in the movie. That was the primary reason. It's interesting to find the Burlington Police Department, the primary reasons for stopping people for speeding was only like 59%. And the reason they mainly stopped people was for defective equipment, a taillight out, you're not maintaining your car properly. So you find that's going to be a very, it'll answer a lot of questions you had tonight. You can go to the library if you don't have a computer here and have this printed off for yourself. That's really all I want to say unless you have some questions of me, but I enjoyed it tonight. We had a very good speaker here, Captain here tonight. Like I say, he's been on the front lines. I was just out there stopping people like you. And you're all too young to maybe some of you older guys. But that was good.
We have another minute. Josh, you have a question that you?
Not really a question. It's more as it might be a theory to why we're talking about how the prison cells were filling up, but the educational system was kind of shutting down. And my theory on you said why is this happening? To me, alcohol is kind of a way to make the mind kind of dull, make it more docile. And as far as education goes, that knowledge is power. So the less power you give to the people, the more you're apt to stay in power. Instead of having these same people get education, be like, I'd like to change some laws, and then become in politics or some kind of politician or create something that could actually make a benefit towards that happening. So the dumber you keep the population, the more docile. That and legalizing weed, I have no problem with, because I think if my dad smoked a joint, he might not have the ambition enough to punch my mom in the eye. And
What's going on in the Middle East right now?
What?
What's going on in the Middle East right now? The young people there aren't given the opportunities to get educated, etc., to get power. They want that. So they're saying, get rid of these old-time dictators and get us somebody here who will allow us to expand our abilities.
I'm sure Walmart loves it, though.
I will add to that a third area that we've entered into as the Beaumont Advisory Committee for Civil Rights is we're looking at the disproportionate amount of blacks in correctional facilities and certain races in the facilities. And we'll be working with judges across the state in corrections and prosecutors. We've been working with the Attorney General's office on much of the things that we've been doing so far, and with law enforcement. So you'll see some, probably in the next year and a half, 2 years, information coming out on corrections.
Because blacks and browns have been brought up here tonight, I think it's important for you to know that the NAACP has come out and endorsed LEAP. Black Officers Association all across the United States has come out and endorsed LEAP. And it's about time, because like I said, 70% of the blacks and browns in prison are there for nonviolent, drug-related crimes. But to have them come out and say, we are active police officers, and it's time for us to step forward and say, this is what we think and this is what we believe, it's great. We really are pleased that they have finally done it.
Brooks Library has to close, so I'd like to thank Sheila Linton from Partnership for Diversity and Family. And Terry Martin, bringing us and Captain Joseph Brooks from Manchester, Connecticut. and good night.
Roll the credits.